1, go. Welcome everyone. Super excited to be seeing you all today, and really excited to get started with today's chat and learn, so y'all can meet our amazing speaker. So let me get my shared screen up here and we will jump in. All right, so joining us live today, we have this amazing woman from Amazon, but before we get into that and before we introduce you to her, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. So like all of our virtual events, we always very greatly encourage participation. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask today, any comments you'd like to share, anything at all, please feel free to do so. All you have to do is you can either put them into the Zoom chat, which is a great option, or you can come off mute to ask your question or add comments. Now, if you are going to come off mute, couple ground rules. If you do come off mute for any reason, you will show up on the live chat today. Now, that means to our recording as well as what we're live streaming to our website. So if you have any kind of privacy concerns, no worries. All you have to do is instead of turning on your or turning off mute and going, asking us via audio, all you have to do is, like I said, just share your comment, question, whatever, into the Zoom group chat. Now, if you want to be on like deep cover and don't want anyone to know that you are here, not a problem. All you have to do is send a message to me directly. You'll just do that DM, so pick my name from the drop-down menu instead of everyone. And then I'll try and raise your questions to Dovey and keep you anonymous. Now, as I did say, this whole session is being recorded. So whether you join us for 5 minutes or stay for the full 60, or if you were unable to join us today, but you did register, hi to those watching in the future, everybody will get a link in about 1 to 2 days in their email, and it'll be a link to rewatch today's session. So don't feel like you have to take notes or anything, because you will be able to go back and review this later. You can watch it as many times as you want. It'll be awesome. Now, if Dovey drops some real amazing, like mind-blowing piece of advice here today, and you just cannot wait to share it with one of your friends or your coworkers or anybody, awesome. What you can do is you can head over to our YouTube channel, where the recording of today's session will be live, usually within about 5 to 15 minutes at the end of the session. I also greatly recommend that you follow our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly. It's a great way to make sure that you stay up to date on awesome events that we host like this and free learning opportunities without cluttering up your inbox or feeling like you just missed a great one. So definitely check that out. And don't forget that you can keep up with us on all of our social media channels. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And what else do I have for you? Oh, if you do want to come off mute and ask a question, that's awesome. Just do your best to make sure that you are not interrupting either Dovey or another participant who's already talking. And make sure that if you do want to come off mute to ask a question, comment, whatever, make sure that you are only off mute while you are actively speaking. You'll see me do this a lot where I go off mute and come back on, because it kind of helps keep the audio clarity clear for everybody else on the call. So unless you're actively speaking, please remain on mute. I think that's all I've got for y'all today. Yeah, so as we get started here, I just would love to introduce you to our speaker. So Dovey Majors is a seasoned and global leader. She is the Director of Workplace Health and Safety for the Worldwide Retail and Global Specialty Fulfillment Network at Amazon. Since joining Amazon in 2018, she has been a GM in North America Customer Fulfillment and in Amazon Air, where she launched and converted a third-party operation to Blue Badge managing assets over $1 billion per week. Prior to Amazon, she spent 7 years in mining, metals, and energy sector, so that's quite the jump. Where she was VP of Operations. Prior to that, she spent 15 years in the entire manufacturing and 5 years in the United States Air Force as an avionics maintenance technician. So thank you, Dovey, for your service. And that's actually a position that's very familiar to me because my husband was in the Army and he was also in avionics. He was a helicopter mechanic. Nice. Dovey has an MBA and is a 6 Sigma Black Belt certified and holds credentials as a certified occupational safety specialist. She's a mentor with Women Unlimited, Inc., where she contributed to the book, Women Are Changing the Corporate Landscape. Dovey lives in Madeira Beach, Florida, jealous, and loves to vacation with her boyfriend, son, and other family. She enjoys country music concerts, tasting new foods, raving over football, and exploring any city she is in like a tourist. So welcome today, Dovey.
Hello, hello. Super excited to be here with you guys today.
We're super happy to have you. All right, so before we jump into the questions, I just want to flag for everybody that Amazon is hiring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a link here in the chat in just a moment, and it's where you can go to check out Amazon's company page on Power to Fly. Now, when you go to that page, it's going to look a lot like what you see up here on the screen, and in the upper right-hand corner of the header up there, you're going to see a big pink button that says follow. So a couple things that you can do here on this page. You can look at their company info. You can check out events. It's not on this tab right here, but when you go to the page, you'll see it. You can check out events like the past events that they've participated in. I know there was a panel not that long back that W was part of that was amazing. I really was super excited to get to chat with her again today after having watched that panel. You can also look at upcoming events they're participating in, like our virtual job fairs, events like today, and our virtual summits that we have once a month. So definitely check out that link there. And then you can also look at their open jobs. Currently, I believe they have 70 or 71 jobs posted with Power to Fly. You can apply via there. It's a great way to make sure that somebody else is following up on your application because there's a customer service rep from Power to Fly attached to each one of these accounts. The other thing, like I had mentioned, the follow button, that is a really great thing to do if you find yourself interested in Amazon and interested in opportunities with Amazon after today. It's also really smart if you are interested in Amazon but don't see any roles currently that you would like to apply for or that's really suit you. Because what it does is it puts you on their follow network, which means that you get updated when they post new roles, so you don't have to keep coming back and checking. But it also means that Amazon knows that you are interested in them without you having to submit an application. So it's a really great thing to take advantage of. So as we move on, like I said, I'll share links in the chat in just a moment where you can go check out that page. But definitely make sure that you follow Amazon if you are interested in working with them. So Debbie, to get us started on the principal themes for today's conversation. So the title of our chat today is super great and super interesting to me, and it's all about how to identify and leverage your transferable skills. So what we're going to try and touch on in these questions and answers today is, like we said, ways to identify and leverage your skills, how to transfer those skills to a new business, as well as how to use your background as fuel for a career pivot. So really, capitalizing on what you have and what you are able to do to help move you into whatever path you want to take, whether it's pretty similar or whether you are making a major change. All right, so Debbie, I am really excited to get started with these questions because they were really great. All y'all submitted some amazing questions before today's chat, but keep in mind that if you are on today's chat and you want to make sure that your question gets answered, please feel free to comment it in the group chat or send it to me in a DM or come off mute and ask. Y'all get the the kind of prime treatment because you took time out of your day to come learn with Power to Fly. So please, please, please take advantage of that. We really want y'all to drive the conversation today. So Debbie, to get us started on some of the questions people had submitted, this person had written in and wanted to know, how do you know what skills will transfer to a completely different job if you have not done that job before?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. The main thing to do is to focus on themes. And those are the themes are what's transferable. So, just to give everybody an example here, I actually moved I'd been with a company in tire manufacturing. I'd been with them for like 16 years. And I ended up moving into a role with a company where, to be honest, I had to Google what it was they did. Like, I had no idea. They said, hey, we make metallurgical coke for the steel industry. And I was like, I don't even know what metallurgical coke is. I had to Google it and figure it out a little bit. And so how do you land a job like that, right? When you have like zero idea. It's all about transferable skills. One, knowing yourself, knowing your worth, and then figuring out like, how have what I've done, how is that like a staple for what I can do at this company? So when I looked at the role, like the opportunity was to be a general manager launching a new site in Ohio. And one of their challenges, like understand the role and what kind of business challenges that role has. This particular company, the challenge they had was launching a role with a business and maintaining a union-free environment. And so I was like, okay, I've had experience doing that before. I've launched a site in South Carolina, union-free. It's still union-free today. That's something that's transferable. Leading people. I've led people. I've led them in the military. I've led them in tire manufacturing. And I also had like an interim role at a Burger King where I led people as well, right? And so all of those skills are transferable. So don't you know, basically take for granted that you don't have the skill set, and don't look for like a, hey, I'm looking for an apples to apples checkbox that I can check off. I mentor again with Women Unlimited. It's one of the things I've found most often is we discredit ourselves. And for us, when we look at that job description, we're trying to find exactly every little word that matches up. Don't do it. I can tell you all the men are out there clicking that box and submitting that application, and they may not even take the time to look at Google to figure out what the job is. They're just applying for it. And so like, I'm going to ask you to free yourself up from trying to get exactly the match and just step back a little bit, be holistic, and think about themes. If you've led people, that's an experience you have. That's something you can do. Leverage that, transfer that. If you've been very technical in your role, and maybe you're in the tech field with, you actually do programming, back end or front end, like focus on that. Hey, I can do programming. Or maybe you've been more of a program manager, programs, you've rolled out things across industries. Maybe it's been in an area like in finance. Maybe you've helped roll out an ERP across an organization. All those things are transferable. So don't get so locked in. Focus on what are the themes of the role, and then what have you done matches that theme.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, obviously you're kind of a perfect person to speak on this subject, having had so many different roles in so many different industries. I know that I'm not quite as far along in my career trajectory, but I do have a lot of weird roles. I mean, like I was in manufacturing, and I have an art history degree. I went to law school. I was a paralegal. Like I've done a lot of really different stuff. And you're right, it's really key to kind of show what you have that would relate and what those through lines kind of are. We did have a really great question in the chat that kind of goes with this. Beth had said, transferable skills are great on a resume, but how do you deal with past job titles that don't do your skills justice, especially when you're pivoting, since these are the first thing that recruiters or hiring managers look at? And I think this is a really great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one I face when I exit the military, right? Because nothing in the military is going to be written the way it is out in the real world.
No one's going to know what that is.
They're not going to have a clue what that is. And again, you do go back to the themes. If you're a people leader, you can focus on people leader and use a common word. And so it's very common for someone like with that rich military experience background, you will see them write, operations manager or operations leader. They will focus on a theme like that instead of, putting down, automatic flight systems specialist. Like no one's going to know what that is. So we're going to go high level and talk about either repair and maintenance leader or something like that makes sense in the civilian sector. And you can do the same thing whether your background is coming from military or coming from a different industry where titles were very different. In the tire manufacturing role that I had, again, it was very typical for them to list roles like a crew leader, which is a supervisor. And so even for me on my LinkedIn, you'll see me reference, my experience as a supervisor there, because that's the terminology that's most common to everyone else.
Yeah, I love that. I have also shared a couple links in the chat thread here in case anybody wants more information on things like your resume and career pivoting. Definitely check out those links that I posted. It's going to take you to our past chats archive where you can search by keyword, and don't kind of like the really old search algorithms before Google became so all knowing and understanding. Try a couple different phrases, synonyms, a couple different tenses, because you will get different results in that archive. But we have some really great chats and stuff like this that can give you a lot more detail. And Dovey actually brings up a really good point, which is kind of writing things in a way that is understandable to somebody who's not in your company or in your industry, so that way the jargon doesn't kind of trip them up. But one of the other things that I hear a lot from people coming to talk on these chats about resumes and career switching or career pivoting, is about focusing on those achievements that you did, as opposed to here's the skills, here's the tasks I had to do. That can actually make it a lot more clear to people what you're capable of doing and where those skills could fit within their organization. Let's see, we've got a bunch of other questions. Okay, so Michelle is asking, what about choosing a job that requires a portfolio? Now, I know we do have some information on this from some of the chats with Kelly Kugler and the Allura Collective, but W, what would you say to this question?
Yeah, so yeah, job roles that I've done that before. Actually, the role that I went to after tire manufacturing required a portfolio, so it's something that I had to pull together. And again, I think I've always relied on the same thing, even going from there and then going to Amazon. And that's always falling back on whatever it is I'm going to use or I'm going to highlight. I make sure that it tells a story with scope and magnitude and that it has depth to it. So whether it's an example that I use or whether it's I'm going to put something in my portfolio, like I know I had some charts and graphs that I wanted to share. So what's the reason, like why did I pick that one thing to share? I picked something that one, I developed, two, that had scope across more than one business unit. It had scope globally. And so I would say I challenge you to, like, if you're going to put a portfolio together, but you can use the same thing when you think about examples you're going to talk about in that interview. Always think about scope and magnitude, and everything you say has to have meaning, as well as everything in that portfolio that you're going to show, make sure it has meaning. So look for it to have some meaning that can explain the scope of what you did, the magnitude of what you did, the results that you drove.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I hear a lot from hiring managers on these calls is talking about, how your profile or your resume, whatever they're seeing, these hiring managers are seeing first, that needs to be kind of like your teaser, right? It needs to give enough information so that they know kind of what they're getting, but they want to know more. And then your cover letter, if applicable, or your portfolio is more like the trailer, where you get a little bit more information, but you still have questions you want to ask. So make your story that you're telling interesting enough that that person is like, oh, I kind of wonder how they went from this to that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk to them a little bit more about that. It also helps to kind of pare down on your resume and pare down on your cover letter, so that way you don't feel like you have to tell, like, a 3-volume novel worth of information to these people. Okay, so let's see. This person, okay, so Jen had asked a really interesting question. She asks, how do you manage expectations while still getting the job? I have fantastic transferable skills, but then still need to learn and develop in that new role for the specifics of that job. When I'm not apples to apples in the job, as a woman, I still want to be trusted and respected. So how have you done this in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, every role that you go into, right, hopefully there's going to be some opportunity to learn something new. So in terms of like interviewing and seeking the role, like how do I go about it? Again, I think part of it is just the human nature of, as you're seeking that pivot, like don't be caught up in it's got to be this one. I would say I always approach it as a basket full of opportunities. And so I'm always going to pitch myself to a basket full of opportunities because I know that somewhere in that basket, I will get like 1 to 3 opportunities will like surface from that. So I think it's important to just frame that up front, right? It's not like you're going to just put your name in for one job, one opportunity, and that's going to be the one. Like you have to keep it realistic, keep that energy high. And to do that, it's like going in knowing that, hey, I'm going to be pitching myself to a basket full of opportunities. And I'm expecting maybe 1 to 3 will actually surface to something that resonates with me, as well as an opportunity that I've got a chance to get in front of. So that's one of the things. The other is, again, you talk about the skills, again, leverage your strengths, right? Because you're trying to land the opportunity. Of course, we all want to learn more and want to grow in scope of the role. That's part of what excites us. But as you're interviewing and seeking that opportunity, it's about showcasing the value that you're going to bring to the table. It's very important to do that because as the person hiring, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the person that's going to be able to come in and understand like what value are they going to bring to this role. So I would say don't sell yourself short and focus on what things you don't know. Like you're selling yourself to the interviewer. I tell everyone, you're the CEO of you. You have a product. That product is you. You're marketing that product. So you're telling them what this product is going to do for you, not what it's not going to do.
No, I think that's awesome. And I love how you talk about, not underselling yourself, but like looking at that challenge, right? Because you're right. When you're going on into these new jobs or new roles, it's not, a lot of people do that because they're kind of moving up through the ranks or they want more responsibility. But even if you're just moving from a different, if you're doing a full pivot as opposed to what you would maybe see as traditional advancement, you don't want to be getting a job that you already know how to do 100% of, because you're likely going to be pretty bored. And that's honestly a way you can pitch that to a potential employer. And I have done this successfully before, where I've said, no, I don't actually know this system or that system, but it sounds kind of similar to these systems that I worked on. Plus, I'm really looking for a role that I can grow into more responsibility than what I've had previously. And I think this would be really good for it. It gives them the idea that, yeah, you understand some of maybe what could be deemed shortcomings, but that you are excited about the challenge, because not everybody is, some people don't want a challenge. So definitely something important to highlight. All right, so we're having so many great questions in the chat thread that I feel bad that we're not really sticking to the list.
That's quite all right.
I know, but these are really great. So Elena had asked earlier, as a special education, ESL, and childhood teacher, are there options for me to change careers? So obviously you're not coming from this background, but coming from somebody who started in the military and has since pivoted to a lot of other roles, what are, objectively speaking, what are some of the special skills or the core things that somebody might learn in this field that they could then apply?
Absolutely. Again, like I said, sometimes we get so caught up in what we did, we forget about all those things that are transferable. And what's funny is my executive assistant that I hired here at Amazon in my last role, so she worked with me over in Amazon Air. She's still there and she's fantastic, right? Doing a phenomenal job. And she was a music teacher. She had her master's in music, and that's what she had done. But she totally nailed it when it came to the interview. We talked about transferable skills. As an executive assistant, I needed someone that's going to keep me organized, keep me on schedule, manage my calendar. And she was able to just walk in and slay it in terms of talking about, how she's had to put together all of her classroom curriculums, how she has to lay out the schedule and figure out at what points in the year do things best lay in. My role was about, as an EA, she would also be responsible for putting on big events for the site. And she was able to talk to that as a music teacher for her class, how she always planned big events, how she partnered with the community. Again, don't get caught up on the role that you have, focus on the role you want. And what have you done that can transfer to that role? She slayed it and she's killing it in her new role.
Yeah, this actually addresses another question that somebody had asked about transferring skills from your personal life to your resume. And we get this question a ton, especially on the chats that I've done with Helen Sanchez about ageism. We get a lot of people that are like, oh, well, I have all these skills, but how does that, how does that cross over? And one of the things to keep in mind is that all those life skills, whether you're young or old, if your life experience is giving you skills that you can use, in a job, in a position, it's not, you learn skills just being a person in the world. So I was a bartender and a waitress for 6 years. So I have a lot of people skills. I have a really good ability to kind of diffuse a heated situation. I know how to make decisions on the fly. So those are things that, granted, if I were applying for a corporate job with just service on my resume, I would still feel a little bit intimidated, but I would know these are skills that I developed that can really be useful, right? Let's see what else we've got here. Oh man. All right, let's go for one question from the list next. This person wants to know, is there really a way to make the best career change in this economy? How can we change careers without a significant financial impact, especially since salary seems to be strictly based on years of field experience?
Yeah, so again, I think it's when we say field experience, it's again, don't quantify that field experience is as field experience in that particular industry. You already have field experience, not unless you are truly coming straight out of college and you have no prior. For me, I was in the military. I actually finished the military, which is how I paid for college. So I had military experience before I had college experience. But those are experiences all the less. So make sure you don't short sell yourself there when you say you don't have any experience. But if you're just coming straight out of school and you truly haven't had a job, an internship, you haven't had anything like that, and you're like, no, really, I'm coming straight from the classroom or coming into a job, how do I, position myself in this type of climate? Yes, you may have to start entry level, but entry level doesn't mean you have to start like entry level, doing the task. You can still walk into an entry level leadership role if that's what you're interested in doing, or maybe it's tech. You can walk into maybe a higher level, entry level, like tech type role. The thing is to position some of those things that you've done, whether you worked on a school project. This is actually fresh to me too, because my son is actually in college and he just landed his first intern with Google. And so doing that, and how he got about it is we like focused on, hey, on your resume, you need to focus on, while you haven't had a job yet, focus on the things and the class projects that you've done. And so that's where he put his energy in, is that experience. You obviously had to complete some projects. He's a computer engineer. I'm like, you've done something to get along the path. So focusing on having that associate's degree that he got first, focusing on, some of the programs that he wrote using C++ and Java, like putting those experiences up front. What are the team projects that you worked on? How did you take a lead on those projects? All of those things are relevant. But if you've had experience and you're asking this question just from the standpoint that you're trying to position yourself into a different industry, and you're looking at it that way, is that you don't have the field experience to go into a different industry, I'm going to tell you, don't hold back. Again, focus on the role that you're seeking in the different industry. Is it a leadership role, a people leader role? If it's a people leader role, have you done people leader type roles already? That's what you want to transfer over. You want to focus on those experiences.
Yeah, that's so great. We're having a lot of people chiming in the chat saying that they absolutely agree. Focus on those school projects. Patricia even brought up a good point, saying if you have volunteer experience, it might help you. Yeah. Saying that they just once got a job because of their volunteering. And this is something we hear a lot on, like, especially the pivoting chats, where people are talking about, like, I want to get more experience, but, especially these comes from like the boot camp grads or people that are like teaching themselves as they go. Volunteering in a way that either relates to the industry you're trying to pivot into, or in a way that uses those skills that you're working to build, speaks volumes, because it tells people this isn't just a job for you. This is something you really like to do, and something you really enjoy, and that you're really committed to keep, further learning and using your skills to help people. So like, that's a really powerful message to give somebody that shows that you are not just kind of in this because it's kind of flavor of the month for you. Like, this is something you really are interested in. That's so great. Okay, so this next person had wanted to know, what advice do you have for those of us who've been in our career 15 plus years and are uneasy about starting from the bottom of a new ladder? This is a really important thing to consider, because if you have reached, mid to upper level in your current field, but now you want to do a completely different career pivot, this is a big concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I said, it's a big deal just to leave a company, period. So I was in tire manufacturing 16 years when I left. So that was the toughest decision I've ever made, to be honest. It was taking a leap of faith, because not only did I know that role, that business, but there were a number of leaders that I knew in that business, right, who could, vouch on my behalf. And now I'm putting myself out to where I've got to learn a new industry. I've got to learn, new people, who I can look to and leverage in my network. So it's tough. That's a tough decision. However, I'm so glad I took that leap of faith. And again, it was about reflecting and being confident. I think it actually made me a better leader because I became more confident, knowing that I could make that transition and not start at an entry level position. And then I actually, went to oil and gas industry, or in mine and metals, generating electricity, to pop over to Amazon. So here I am at Amazon now and I hadn't done anything like Amazon in my background before. And so I think it's just finding that comfort level of speaking about what is it like at Amazon. We talk about people having superpowers, and it's like learning who you are and what your superpowers are and what you bring. Like, I know my superpowers, it's people. I know I have that innate ability to inspire and leverage others. And so it doesn't even matter what field that's in. Like, I don't care if it's tech, if it's, ops, if it's safety. I'm in safety now. Whatever it is, you have to move people. And I know that that's my superpower. So I focus on those strengths around aligning people and getting people to play at a higher level, to work together, to tackle tough tasks together. And so that's what I would encourage you to do is, I would say focus on those things. Like, it is scary. I mean, I can tell you don't be scared, but it is scary, but have confidence in what you've accomplished and how that will manifest itself in a role that you move into. And then again, just look for those roles where that skill makes sense. I mean, I did go from operations to operations. So I'm not sure if you're trying to like completely pivot and maybe leave a 16-year in finance or accounting and pivot to operations, right? I can see where you might think that's tough, but it's not, because you can make that pivot based on what you've done, whether you've been an individual contributor or a people leader. I always say individual contributors are actually harder leadership roles. And that's because you've got to persuade and influence people who don't report to you. Like, you've got to get them on board with a project or a program. Those are super strong people leader skills in bringing data to the plate. And you could talk about how do you get them to buy in. Maybe you bring data and you show them. And so you create projects that they pull toward them. So it's all in about how you reframe that experience that you've had and move it over.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have a lot of people that are asking about, specific skills, especially ones like, are there some skills that are like really awesome to highlight, and as well as, let's see, ways that you can really highlight those skills, especially on places like LinkedIn, that you maybe don't want to alert your current employer that you're looking for a new opportunity or looking to pivot. So let's kind of break this down. We'll talk a little bit first about some of the kind of skills that are really easily transferable, or skills that you might not recognize are skills, because I feel like people somewhat pejoratively like kind of deem these soft skills, right? Anything that doesn't come with like a certificate or a name brand of like, this is what I now know how to do.
Yeah, I would say like the easy skills that that you can pivot. Again, I've talked about them already, right? People leader. If you've led others, that's an easy skill to transfer. People are people. I don't care where you are in the world, people are people. And so if you've done people leadership, that transfers very easily. Other skills that transfer, like if we start to look at the ones where you didn't know it was a skill, I think that's where I talked about like an individual contributor in program management, or, using influence. That, because maybe you haven't had people leadership, but you've had to influence others. And so you have done it, you just don't know that you've done it. And so that's where I think you've got to be creative in how you capitalize about it. And so tapping into, well, what does people leadership mean, right? Or if they say, hey, we're looking for a role, we're looking for a manager, like what is it about that role specifically? And so maybe you've been able to influence others on large projects, and that's a skill set that you can bring over. I would say definitely, leverage that and put that out there, because those, again, it's harder to get people all together and to move in the same direction when you're not their direct leader. You've really got to figure out what's in it for them. And so if you've got a skill set around that, being able to dive into a problem, figure out what are the common pieces for everybody and help ferret a way forward, that's a great skill set in terms of problem solving and leading teams, that's transferable.
Yeah, I think you're right. People kind of get maybe a little pigeonholed here and feel like if you don't have leadership skills, or if you don't have, a specific type of these soft skills, then you don't really have anything to offer. And it's like, no, like, are you good? I mean, I got my first job with, my first remote job was with Power to Fly. And I got that largely because one of my skills that I'm really good at is like personal time management, and like knowing how to pivot within my current, all my tasks. Or being able to set deadlines for myself and reach them and manage all of that without having somebody overseeing me in the same room or even in the same continent. So it's a really good thing to have that I didn't really ever think to flex before, because so many places, especially 3 years ago, were all about in-person work, right? It seemed like a lot less easy to find that remote role. So definitely kind of take a step back and see what are some of the skills that you've developed, even like we talked about, in your personal life or in past roles, that really do like kind of work in multiple ways. You can apply them and say, well, I see that you want somebody that can, that can help develop ideas or can help like work with a team to like streamline. I'm really great at creative thinking and helping drive other people's ideas. So like that's a really good way to kind of highlight that.
Yeah.
Esther is asking how to avoid sounding corny when you're talking about these things. She says that she's really driven, but I feel like it's something that everyone really says. So should you be concerned about kind of like maybe the cliche of some of these things?
I would say the best approach is not so much being cliche about it, but the follow up to it, like what's the meat to it. And so, where I say, hey, my superpower is people. I'm a people leader. Like following that up with a story during an interview, you would follow that up with a story that resonates around that, like moving people to accomplish something bigger than they could accomplish alone. And so, again, everything you say should have a reason that you say it, right? And so that's where you lay down that big story that you have, up your sleeve, and you've been waiting to get it on the table, and you talk about how that resonates. So like for me, for people skills, I always will go back to any of my launch experiences, just because launches are very difficult. And so any launch experiences that I've had, various sites that I've started that are union free when I launched them, still union free to this day, which shows my focus around people. And around, how do you leverage a team and pay close attention to how your front line is feeling, while also managing at a high level and skilling up your managers to make sure they're creating the right culture. So look for those stories that would reflect that.
Yeah, okay, so address the other side of this question here. This person wanted to know, how do we highlight those transferable skills on LinkedIn without alerting our current employer that we're seeking a new opportunity? So I'm really interested to see how would you approach this?
I mean, yeah, my LinkedIn profile is pretty static. So I actually, for me, I just put simply the roles. I think that's where you do need to network and work behind the scenes. So I think if you just looked at my LinkedIn profile in itself, it just shows that I've been at different companies, and I've got a varied experience, but I get a lot of hits off of what's out there. I really think it's what you do behind the scenes. And I've had people like, want to get past the robot, especially at Amazon, right? Because the bot fills our resumes. This is where the power of your network matters. This is where, like, I am a power user on LinkedIn in terms of if it's a company I want to be a part of, like coming over to Amazon, it was looking in my network to see who in my network already has a relationship at Amazon. And I was actually able to leverage that. And then once I found I had one person, just one, at that time, there was one person in my network who actually worked at Amazon. And so I leveraged that person. I ended up getting to an interview, and prior to the interview, I had him leverage a one-on-one introduction with me and someone who was at an executive level within operations at Amazon. I did the one-to-one, and what I found out later, it was so interesting when I flew to Seattle for my interview, was the person that he leveraged me with to do that one-on-one. This person was the vice president of operations overall, which I don't know how he knew him, but he knew him. He's like, yeah, we were in the same class on my first day, which is typical at Amazon. Your first day, you'll be in the class with people that maybe are lower level skill wise than you, or you may be in there with executives, and everyone has to go through a day one program. And so you never know who you're in there with. And that's who he was in there with. And then I leveraged that contact to get my name in.
That is so cool. Sorry, guys. I think the mailman's outside, so my dog's probably going to bark soon. So one of the things that I want to highlight here is because, like when I started at Power to Fly, I was a talent advocate, which means I spent a ton of time with a job description in hand, trying to go look for people that would suit that role. The biggest thing to make sure that you kind of let people know about, like, especially with things like LinkedIn, if you don't want people to know that you're job hunting, that's totally fine. But keep in mind, your Power to Fly profile is not visible to anybody outside of Power to Fly admins and hiring managers from like our partner companies. So unless your partner company is part of, the Power to Fly like team, they're not going to see this. So that's a great place where you can call out like, hey, I come from an education background, but I'm looking to get into lion taming or whatever. The other thing that you can do, because we hear this a lot from people, is use your cover letter to explain that pivot or explain like that shift that you want to make. like, hey, I've had this much, I have all of these experiences from this career that I've had, but I want to pivot and really apply them to this, or this is where my passion really lies. That's a really great way to do it. The other thing is, especially with your LinkedIn profile or your resume, you are trying to grab somebody's attention. You're trying to make that connection easy for them. So, obviously LinkedIn might not be a place where you feel comfortable doing it, but if you focus on things like your achievements and the skills that you learned or developed or really flexed in that job, that is going to speak volumes and make it a lot easier for that hiring manager or the talent scout or whatever to make those connections quickly and not see it as much of a stretch. You just need to, that's the place where you can really hammer that home. Like I said, on your Power to Fly profile or on your resume and cover letter. Okay, so let's jump back to some of these questions. We had a lot of people want to know about like kind of tailoring their resumes. So is that something like when you were looking to pivot, did you like tailor your resume depending on the job you were looking at? Or when you went to pivot, did you know what industry you wanted to move into?
Yeah, I actually have like 10 different resumes. So like I said, my focus was to like attack a basket of opportunities and then see which ones kind of, go through the funnel and kind of filter down to like the one to three that I really want to go after. And so I had one that was educational based, like one that was operations based, one that was program manager based. And so, yeah, I adjusted a resume to fit all of those different types of roles. And then when I applied, and I use LinkedIn too. When I apply for roles on LinkedIn, I always made sure I used the type of resume based on the job that I was applying for. I didn't just do a one resume and then just drop it to everybody. I was very detail oriented in that regard.
No, I think that's really important for people to know. We do have a ton of questions more about Power to Fly, so I'm going to try and see if I can find a chat to direct you to like a previous one, so that way we're not taking up Debbie's time. But thank you for those questions, y'all, and I will try and get to answer them in the chat while we address the next question. All right, so this person wanted to know, if you don't have that contact leverage, how else can you develop that? So like you said, like somebody was lucky enough to be in that room with that person at that one time. But if you don't have the contacts, what can you do?
But someone has a contact. So I like network is everything. And I actually help a lot of other folks. Like I've helped connect folks with leaders, not at Amazon, but in other industries where I have a contact, just because, again, I do Women Unlimited mentoring. And because of that organization, I have a number of contacts from a number of different businesses. And so there's always a way to have a contact. I think you should like look and try and leverage that, because a personal contact is a game changer. But in the absence of that, it's like following those elements of making sure your resume calls out what you've achieved. Like, make sure it doesn't read like a job description. That is the easiest way for your resume to like just go to file 13. Like if it just reads like, I managed people and delivered results, like if it reads like a job description, most of the times people aren't going to pay attention to it. Those bullet points are meant to call out what you achieved in that role, so you have to make it achievement oriented. If some people say, well, I was like a data entry clerk, and so maybe I entered medical records, but I'm ready to like transition and to do something in accounting because I have a degree background in that. Okay, that's great, but don't just on your resume say you entered records. Like, talk about the crunch time of that. Maybe you successfully created over 1 million entries in a certain amount of time frame. Like, make it achievement oriented, and those are the things that are going to stand out about your resume.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we've got a ton of really great questions coming in, and just so you know, everybody, we only have about 15 minutes left in today's chat. It always goes really quickly, so please feel free to keep those questions coming. We will try and get to as many as we can. All right, so we have a lot of people asking questions about the transferability of these soft skills that they've learned in various industries. And one of the things that it seems like a lot of folks are really curious about is how to make those skills sound professional or sound like their actual, like they would be applicable to a job. So we've got a lot of people that are coming from maybe a background in childcare or education, that kind of thing. So if you're looking to, kind of maybe zhuzh up or church up your skills a little bit, where can you, like, what is your recommendation for people that maybe think that they don't have the wording quite right?
So, I mean, one of the things that I've done, like I said, I've got a number of resumes. I always look for one, who's doing what I would like to do. So I look, is there anyone in my network already that's doing something, and they don't have to be doing it at the company I wanted to be doing it at, but are they doing something like what I want to be doing? Then I make sure I get on their calendar, like, hey, can you give me 30 minutes one-to-one? And I want to know more about what they do. From that, I take that information to craft what I already do and how it aligns with that, because that gives you a free, like a safe zone sounding board type to learn a little bit more about what you want to get into. So if I'm transitioning in operations, I've never done operations before, like it's a great way for me to find someone in my network that's done it and then ask them some questions and figure out what part of my skills that I want to like talk to cater that. And what makes, that's where you can ask them, all right, so what makes an operations leader? Like, what are the key strengths of an operations leader? Like you can ask those for those points and then look for how have you already done that? Those are like some of the ways that I've like crafted that message.
Yeah. And don't forget, everybody, like, so I sit through a lot of these. And one of the things that I hear a lot is that nobody's expecting you to like reinvent the wheel with your resume. So Google, search around, look around, read other people's resumes where you can find them, and even read their job descriptions or what their LinkedIn profiles say. Because if you find a way to word something that somebody else has already used, or it's like, you find it on somebody else's page, you can use that. Obviously, I'm not saying copy someone's resume to represent skills or experiences or whatever that you don't have. But if you find somebody that has a good way to word something, copy it, use it in your resume. Nobody's comparing these one-to-one to make sure you haven't plagiarized. And as long as you're representing skills you actually have, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, please, like I've done this so many times, and Debbie's right. Like I have 6 different resumes because at one point I was applying for childcare and food service and admin and paralegal and like all these different jobs. I have like 5 or 6 different ones still hanging out.
Yeah. And it's, again, when you looking at the job description of the job you want to apply for is also like, again, don't trap yourself by going, okay, I got to find how I apply to all these bullet points. My advice to you is just find one bullet point in there that resonates with you and extrapolate on that one bullet point. Like, because we limit ourselves when we say, oh, it's got to match every single one. Don't do it. Find one that's like, oh, that one bullet point resonates with me. I've done something like that before. Find that one and then extrapolate on that one, like turn that one bullet point into 3 or 4 bullet points of your own. Like that's a way to also like create and grow that relevance.
Yeah, I love that idea, because you're right. It doesn't have to be a 1-for-1. If something on that list of 5 really like resonates with you, then focus on that. Show how you can bring that to the table. We also have a lot of people that are asking questions about like tailoring resumes, as well as maybe listing too many skills or feeling like they have too many skills on their resume. So let's talk a little bit about, outside of like tailoring a resume for different jobs that you're applying to, how maybe do you know when you have too many skills listed?
When your resume won't fit on 2 pages or less, like you got to trim something out. It's bottom line. I try to keep mine on 1 page, and I have a lot of different experiences.
Yes, for sure. If you're all curious about like kind of a resume, especially when your resume is very long and how to treat that, please look on Power to Fly, check out all of our ageism chats or those with Helen Sanchez. She has really great advice on this.
Yeah. And don't shrink your font to a 10. Don't go to a 10-point font to make it fit. Like.
Oh my gosh. People do that and it's insane. I found this question really interesting. So Kimberly says, I've worked in faith-based service work, both domestically and internationally. Is there a way to list those transferable skills without prospective employers focusing on the faith-based aspect instead of knowledge and skills? So I thought this was interesting because there's definitely certain things that you can put on a resume that may color someone's impression about you just because of where you did them. So how would you handle something like this if you are worried about the employer focusing on something else about your work experience as opposed to just your knowledge and skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually hired someone to be an operations manager at one of the sites I was at, and that had been a significant portion of his background was his volunteer work at a faith-based organization. Actually, he was a minister there, but you have transferable skills, and he nailed it. Like, he talked about growing his membership. Like, those are all key challenges, growing business, growing memberships, like those are very similar key challenges. And he was able to reflect to the skills and that he had to bring to the table to grow his membership. He had to talk about how did he brand his organization out in his community. Branding your organization, as well as branding your organization internal to an organization, is also important, especially as a people leader. You're going to have you're going to lead a team. And so how do you keep that team engaged? How do you make them feel that work is fun? Like, those things that you've done as a faith-based leader probably revolved around, like, how do you steer people and get them to come together as one? Or how do those are relevant. They apply, they're the same thing. And so it's really about talking to the pieces of that experience that are relevant for the job that you're applying for.
Yeah, I mean, and think about it. Not a lot of people are, let's say, like water salesmen in the desert. There's not always they're not always pitching to a market that absolutely must have needs your product or your services or whatever. So everybody has a little bit of those, like maybe the sales skills or maybe the conversational abilities. Those are things that are important that you really can utilize in a lot of different industries. All right, we're going to try and get to as many questions left as we have. Tina had asked, if you're applying to a new role as a pivot, but you are an experienced hire, how do you make the case for getting paid competitively when you don't have all the experience that the company is looking for, but you do have a lot of the valuable skills and then like cumulative work experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, you're going to keep the energy going throughout the hiring process. You're not going to talk money until you've gotten down to the last itty bit, right? Because there is a psychology that's at play. What I found out is too, once people have put all that work in you, like, they're going to negotiate with you. They're not going to let you just like walk away over a dollar amount. So like, go all the way. Be confident in who you are, be confident in your value. If there needs to be a trip to go interview, do the trip. If there needs to be, hey, they want to bring you in to see the area, go do it. And get all the way down to you have the offer letter in hand. Once you have the offer letter, that's where money's been talked about. That's where you have that opportunity to come back and say, listen, and again, frame it as, I'm super excited about this opportunity. It's a great match for where I am in my career. There's just a few points we can align on, and I know we'll be home. Like, just keep the excitement coming and then call out. You have to ask for what you want. And so, like, don't go into the deal if it's a deal breaker for you. At the end of the day, if they're going to come back and say that's the bottom line offer, then they'll say that. It's not like they're going to take the offer away from you just because you asked for more.
Yeah, and I think that's something really important to highlight, is that this isn't like a take it or leave it, like 1 minute decision. You know what I mean? If you say, no, I want this, and they're like, nah, they're not going to just pull the offer. At least most reputable employers.
I haven't seen that happen. Yeah.
Yeah. But then one of the things that I heard, it was a couple of weeks ago, but I heard it on a chat and I was like, that's amazing, was know your worth and add tax. So think about about the job that they're asking you to do. And if the importance to them is really focused on you having like 7 years in that role already, okay, fine. Like, that's not what you're bringing to the table. And if they're still interested in you when you are not meeting that requirement, it's for a lot of reasons, and probably for a lot of the other things that you're bringing to the table. So ask for what you're worth, because you're never going to get it if you don't ask for it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we only have about 7 minutes left, so I am going to pivot us just a little bit here. But I did share some more links in the thread so people can connect or can check out our past chats. Again, I'm more than happy to answer Power to Fly questions. I just don't really want to do that on an Amazon chat. So let me try and see if we can maybe put together like a Power to Fly basics chat coming up in the future here, and that we can get people's questions about those things answered. Let me share my screen here. Sorry, my dog is like sneezing under my desk. Okay, so we had submitted some of these questions to Dovey prior to today's session. And so we wanted to ask, some of these questions about like Amazon and the company culture and all that stuff. So without reading word for word what we've got up here, Debbie, what is your favorite part about working at Amazon? Something that really like exemplifies the company culture of progressiveness or being progressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being a pioneer here, when I think about COVID-19 hitting and, we put in over 150 different corrective actions during that time to make sure, we were safe for our associates, as well as being able to meet the needs of our customers. And just the way the company thinks about things like that and just moves fast, it's completely amazing to me. And I absolutely love it. I love learning new things. And so as times change, we're quick to grow and we're quick to like be on the leading edge of that. I was also here, when we changed our minimum wage to $15, and being a part of that announcement and being able to walk. I mean, at my site at that time, I had over 3,500 associates at my site, and being able to share that message and see everyone get so pumped up and be able to talk to my managers, my manager team. We had over 82 managers, and being able to talk to them about this great news that they get to go out and share. It's just so inspiring and uplifting, and you feel like a pioneer, and it's super exciting. And to me, it's extremely progressive.
That's so great. So let's talk a little bit down here at the bottom about your top 3 tips for someone who's interviewing. Now, are these Amazon specific, or are these like if you're interviewing for a job under you somewhere?
These work for Amazon, but I'm going to tell you, I think they will work anywhere. You have to research who you are. We've talked about that a lot today, and understand the value that you create in your current role. And the way that I did that in my prep for Amazon is I actually used Excel. I made a matrix. I took every leadership principle, and for every leadership principle, I put 3 examples of what I've done that references that particular leadership value. So that's where I say, take the time to do your research. So I took all 14 leadership principles, and for all 14, I had 3 examples and every example that I use, again, I made sure that example had scope and magnitude. From there, once the research is done, then I went back through them and I said, okay, let me circle the ones that really resonate. Like if I'm going to tell this story, is that a good story sell? Like if I'm going to tell a story that's, talks about maybe me helping, while it's great that I've helped a number of folks in their careers, but if it's very small in scope and only talks about, one associate that I helped move from an hourly level role into their first leadership level role, for me at the position that I was interviewing at, that wasn't big enough scope. And so I made sure the examples that I used had scope relevant to the job that I was trying to get. So an executive, I wanted to make sure I gave examples that showcase, where I've done work that was either on a global nature, like going to India and, living there basically for 6 months and doing a merger with a team and performing due diligence. I made sure I gave big stories. And then be concise and manage the cadence. And so this is one, I've given this tip to a number of folks and they're always surprised about it. But I can tell, especially in today where everything is done via Zoom or conference call, energy is everything. And so you want to make sure that you manage the cadence. Be specific and concise in your response, but also manage the cadence. And I talk about that as like music. But if you can get a metronome on your phone, and I actually do this with people, and I put the metronome on 120 beats per minute, and I have them speak at 120 beats per minute. And if you can get that rhythm in your head and you can speak that way, that cadence displays energy, and people love hiring people full of energy. And so you want to make sure you have that when you get to the interview.
I've never heard of that, but I have one of these mind blown moments on every single chat. It does not matter how many times I've sat with that person or how many times I've covered the subject. I have one of those every time. That one is amazing. I've never heard that before. So thank you, Debbie. I will take that. All right. So before we run out of time today, I do just want to highlight some of the open jobs that Amazon has right now. Would you like to speak to any of these, or do you want to talk a little bit more generally about jobs at Amazon?
Yeah, well, the first one up there, that WHS manager role, that role is actually posted within my organization. I am a director for worldwide retail. I also have production services. And so we have a lot of different businesses under us. And that particular role that we have posted is part of a new emerging business that's coming up, still under secret cover for a little bit, but what I can say is it will be in our retail space. And so when you think retail, think of our Amazon Fresh stores that are launching globally right now. Think of our SRS and Go stores. Those are our stores with the walk-in, walk-out technology. So as those stores are launching, that operations model is building. We have WHS managers that we're hiring to be able to guide both. We have to talk to making sure those buildings are launched and that we have our hat on in terms of workplace health and safety when we do that. And then the other roles that I've got advertised on here are all within Amazon Air. And again, I had helped launch the Baltimore Washington International Airport Amazon Air site last year. And so these roles are all open in the Baltimore, Maryland area. And so I wanted to highlight those. Amazon Air is a emerging sector with Amazon also growing. The fleet is growing, so tons of jobs there. The ones I have posted are in Baltimore, Maryland area, but we actually have them all over as well. Even some in Luxembourg, Germany, because I saw someone join the call from Germany.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, so we are at the end of our time today. I'm so sorry for everybody with the amazing questions we didn't get to, but thank you so much to all the participants, especially people that watched today on YouTube or tuned in on our website for the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Devi, I just want to say a huge thank you. This was a great session. It's Monday afternoon, but I am energized and ready to get my week going. So thank you so much for coming on with us today and sharing your amazing advice and your amazing experience with us.
You're welcome. It was great to see everyone. Get out there and make it happen Monday.
Yes. All right. Like I said, I shared some links in the chat where y'all can connect later, places that you can check out some of Amazon's open roles and all that stuff. So hopefully we'll see many more of you on upcoming sessions. Please feel free to join us for a bunch of the stuff we've got coming up in the following weeks, as well as our May mini summit that's happening May 3rd through the 6th. It's all about inclusion in finance. So whether you are interested in the world of finance or interested in learning more about finance and how generational wealth is built and that kind of thing, or if you're in the industry, please feel free to attend. It's all free. Super excited to see many more of you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great week, everyone.
Yes, it was wonderful.